Tonight's video is on multiplying and dividing fractions. So my hope, your objective for tonight is I can multiply and divide signed fractions. So I'm hopeful after tonight's review on multiplying and dividing fractions, you'll be very comfortable multiplying and dividing positive and negative fractions. Let's just review multiplying fractions. When you multiply fractions, it's important to remember you do not need a common denominator. Where we needed a common denominator when we added and subtracted fractions, in multiplying you do not need a common denominator. You simply multiply straight across the numerators, straight across the denominators. Then you look to see if the answer can be simplified. If it can, you simplify it. So in the first example, if you look 2/5 times 9/2, if you multiply straight across the numerators, 2 times 9 is 18. Straight across the denominators, 5 times 2 is 10. So 18/10 would be your answer. However, that can be simplified. So you can just divide numerator and denominator by 2 because 2 goes into both, and 9/5 is your answer. Here's another example. You just multiply straight across the top. 3 times 5 is 15. Straight across the bottom, 4 times 2 is 8. So 15/8 is your simplified answer. Now keep in mind you can rewrite them as mixed numbers if you want. 5 goes into 9 once with how many left over? 4 left over. So 5 goes into 9 once with 4 left over. That means 1 4/5. 9/5 is 1 4/5. If we look at a couple of rectangles broken into fifths, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these are two rectangles broken into fifths. If I have 9/5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9/5 is the same as one whole rectangle and 4/5 of another. So that's why the answer is 1 4/5. You'll remember that from our previous lessons. And so again, we could do the same thing with 15/8 and show that that is 8 goes into 15 once with 7 left over. So that's one whole rectangle and 7/8 of another. You could also choose to simplify first. Sometimes when we're multiplying fractions, if we're going to produce very large numbers, it's easier sometimes to simplify first. So if you look at our first example, 2 times 9 was 18, 5 times 2 is 10, dividing top and bottom by 2, you got 9/5 as an answer. Well, you could also choose to simplify first. 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 2 once. At that point, you would multiply straight across the numerators. 1 times 9 is 9, and straight across the denominators. 5 times 1 is 5, and you still end up with 9/5. It's important to remember you don't have to simplify first. This is just an option. So if that dividing out those 2's in that alternative solution was uncomfortable for you, if you're more comfortable, just multiply straight across the top, straight across the bottom, and simplify in the last step. That works just as well. Now, to multiply mixed numbers, you need to first convert them to improper fractions. So 3 2/5. 5 times 3 is 15, and 2 is 17. So that's 17/5. 1 times 4 is 4, plus 1 is 5. So that's 5/4. So that's 17/5 times 5/4. Then you can just go ahead and multiply those. Again, using our alternative solution, if you simplify first, 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 5 once, multiplying straight across the top then, straight across the bottom. 17 times 1 is 17, 1 times 4 is 4. You could choose to now rewrite this as a mixed number. 4 goes into 17 4 times. 4 times 4 is 16, so that's 1 left over. So that would be 4 whole rectangles and 1/4 of another one. Now we have to remember our rules for multiplying signed numbers. Positive times a positive is a positive. Negative times a negative is a positive. Positive times a negative is a negative. And a negative times a positive is a negative. Keep in mind, when the signs are the same, your answer will be positive when multiplying. When the signs are different, your answer will be negative when multiplying. So now you could try this example here. The only difference is we're dealing with sign numbers. 3 times 2 is 6. 8 times 5 is 40. A positive times a negative. That's the only new little step here. A positive times a negative is a negative. Then again, once you look, you say, okay, I can actually simplify numerator and denominator. Dividing top and bottom by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 40 divided by 2 is 20. And even when we simplify, that negative out front doesn't get lost. Carry it right along. Let's look at another example together. First of all, this is a negative times a negative. Well, what's a negative times a negative? A negative times a negative is a positive. 1 times 3 is 3. 10 times 6 is 60. So that's positive 3/60. Again, you could choose to simplify. Divide top and bottom by 3. That's a positive 1/20. So this is the same process for multiplying fractions. Now they just have signs, so you have to remember your rules for multiplying signed numbers. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pause the video. I'd like you to try to multiply the following fractions and mixed numbers. So take a minute, pause the video, come on back, and we'll put up the answer key. All right, hopefully you paused the video because at this point I'm going to show the answer key. And if you didn't pause the video, you're just going to have all the solutions in front of you and your brain will stop working because it'll be like, somebody else worked that out for me. I'm all good. So hopefully you did pause that video. For the first one, you should have gotten negative 2/5. The next one, you should have gotten positive 32/5. That's an improper. You could choose how many times does 5 go into 32? 6 with 2 left over. So that's 6 full rectangles and 2/5 of another. For the next, negative times a negative is a positive, 49/8. How many times does 8 go into 49? 8 goes into 49 6 times. 6 times 8 is 48, so we have 1/8 left over. That's 6 full rectangles and 1/8 of another. And the last one, positive times a positive is a positive. You simplify and you get a positive 1/3. If you have any issues, you need to take a minute, stop the video. You need to go through and see where your mistakes were made because these solutions are solved for you step by step. You could have used your alternative for multiplying for 1, 2, and 4 because you could simplify before you multiply if you chose. So again, 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 6 twice. In the end, you still get a negative 2/5. Sorry about that. I'm producing another video while I'm doing this one. Next one, you could have done your 16/3, rewriting your mixed number as an improper. And at that point, you could say 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 6 twice. At the end of the day, you still get 32/5. That last one, finally, lots of simplifying can happen. 4 goes into 4 once, 4 goes into 8 twice. So then you have 1/9 times 6/2. Then you could simplify this way. 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 6 3 times. At that point, you have 1/9 times 3/1. Simplify again. 3 goes into 3 1, 3 goes into 9 3 times. In the end, you get 1/3. Now let's talk about dividing fractions. Now we have worked with multiplying and dividing fractions, so this should just be a quick review for you. When dividing fractions, you do not need to have a common denominator. Remember, that's only with adding and subtracting fractions. To divide two fractions, change the operation to multiplication and take the reciprocal of the second fraction. That means to flip over that second fraction. You can do keep, change, change. So here we keep our 2/5, we change our division to multiplication, and we take the reciprocal or flip over that second fraction. So 2/5 divided by 9/2 is 2/5 times 2/9. So you're going to change the operation, you're going to flip that second fraction, and then it becomes a multiplication problem. So 2/5 divided by 9/2 becomes 2/5 times 2/9, and then you get to multiply straight across the top, straight across the bottom to get 4/45 as your final answer. Remember the rules for dividing sign numbers. Positive times, oops, that should say positive divided by a positive is a positive. Negative divided by a negative is a positive. Positive divided by a negative is a negative. And a negative divided by a positive is a negative. These all should really say divided by. Sorry about that. Same exact rules as multiplying sign numbers. If you have the same sign, the result will be positive when you're dividing. And if you have different signs, the result will be negative when you're dividing. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to try each of these, divide the following fractions and mixed numbers. Again, remember to keep, change, keep your first fraction, change your division to multiplication, and change that second fraction to its reciprocal. Flip it over. So I need you to take a minute, pause the video, try these out because the answer key is going to be shown in a moment. And if you don't pause the video, your brain will stop working as soon as it sees the solutions. It says, I'm all good, I got this. Even though internally you will not have this. So give a chance for yourselves to try it out on your own before you go and check your work. All right, hopefully you paused the video. So here's our solution. 6/5 divided by a negative 1/2 is 6/5 times a negative 2/1. Multiplying straight across the numerator, straight across the denominator. 6 times 2 is 12. 5 times 1 is 5. Positive times a negative is a negative. So that's a negative 12/5. If you're someone who likes to rewrite as mixed numbers, that's a negative. 5 goes into 12 twice with 2 left over. So that's a negative 2 2/5. The next one, negative 3/2 divided by a negative 1/2. That's negative 3/2 times a negative 2/1. A negative times a negative is a positive. Negative times a negative becomes a positive. Straight across the top, straight across the bottom. 3 times 2 is 6. 2 times 1 is 2. Divide top and bottom by 2. That's 3/1, which is just 3. Next one, positive times a positive will be a positive. 2 1/3 is the same as 7/3. So that's 7/3 divided by 3 2/3 is 11/3. Then we keep, change. We have our 7/3 times 3/11, and then you can multiply straight across the top, straight across the bottom. Remember, you have to rewrite your mixed numbers as impropers before you can divide. Straight across the top, straight across the bottom is 21/33, dividing top and bottom by 3, 7/11. In the final example, a negative divided by a positive will be a negative, so I already know my answer has to be negative. Changing 1 2/3 to an improper of 5/3. You have negative 7/3 divided by 5/3. That's negative 7/3 times 3/5. Straight across the top, straight across the bottom, 21/15. Divide top and bottom by 3, negative 7/5. Hopefully that review was helpful. Have a good night.